I went in to see her one day and I told her, I said, I just feel like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I can't figure out what it is. And she said, Jodi, I've just been waiting for you to say those words. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, because I've known for a long time that, you were put here. There are bigger and better things. You were meant to help other people. And I was like, well, I can't go back to college because I'm too old to go back to school. And she said, you are never too old to do anything that you want to do. So when I moved to Arizona, I decided to go back to school. And I enrolled at the University of Arizona, and I received a certification in life coaching, family recovery coaching, and I also am a family and parent support specialist. And so my biggest passion, though, is working with families who have a loved one that is affected by addiction. I know what it's like to be in that role and not know what to do and think that you are all alone and have no other options.
Welcome to I Am Her. We're all about glitter, grit, and grace. This is The Shift, where spiritual meets spicy, F-bombs meet forgiveness, and shadow work occasionally throws glitter.
Welcome, everyone, to I Am Her, Season 2, Episode number 3. Trace. I am Emmy.
I'm Thylene.
And we are so glad you are here. Tonight we have a very, very special guest with us. But before we get to her, I let y'all down because I do not have LaCroix. I have not been to the grocery store to restock. Bwomp, bwomp, bwomp.
Okay, so normally when we have guests, we don't pull cards. I'm moving a lot and you're welcome. But today I felt super connected to this card, and I would feel like I would be doing everyone, all 5 people who watch. I'm just kidding. Anyone who hears this, if you are called to this moment, that means that this message was meant for you. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. We're going to take the time. Even though when we have guests, we like to give them the floor and have everything all about them as much as possible. But I just feel so called. So I'm going to pull this up really quickly and read through this, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. It's all good. No judgment. This is meant for you to connect. So I got Sword of Assertion, Palladian of Activations, Anchoring Light. Unfazed by obstacles and fueled by determination, you take action swiftly and assertively. Be careful not to become overbearing. This card holds the energy of action, assertiveness, and high ambition. There is such motivation to succeed that nothing will get in the way. A focused mind fosters solid perspectives on important current affairs. Fast thinking and quick to respond, there is strength and power in your actions. But it comes with a warning. Without higher awareness, the potent energy you hold can become scattered, misdirected, or unsustainable. The Sword of Assertion reminds you to be aware of your impulsiveness or to look at where you might be overbearing or dominating. Be careful not to be too hasty in areas that need more delicate attention. Cultivate awareness of where this driving motion is going and if you really are moving forward. You may also be lacking decisiveness and focus right now. This card invites you to access more forward motion and assertiveness. You may feel like you have lots to offer in the world, but there is a lack of ignition at the moment. It can often be a tricky balance between assertiveness and domination. You may feel like anything is possible and swing from an underactive to overactive assertion. The medicine of the image is that of finding a graceful balance. If this power is new to us, or there is some deeper insecurity generating a need to overcompensate, we must learn to wield it responsibly. You know that your efforts are coming from a noble place, and you want to be a helpful force in the world. Come back to your center and reflect on whether it is useful to bring more of this force into your life or cool it down a little. Are you coming from a subconscious desire to prove something? Is your urgency due to stress or an attempt to avoid facing your true feelings? If you are not feeling proactive or experiencing a deficiency of assertiveness, consider what might be holding you back. Is it self-worth, fear of stepping on other people's toes, or feeling safer playing small to avoid confrontation? Could it even be that you may be seen for the bright light of your unlimited potential? This card inspires inquiry into how this power plays out in your life and how it can be fine-tuned for even more excellence. I knew I had to read a card. Not every time am I going through something that I think the whole collective is going through. But I do think that this specific topic is something that so many people are feeling, trying to find that balance. Like, you've seen growth, you feel the growth. You have even had some success and some manifestations come through. And so you go all in, right? How many of us are people who are like all or nothing people? We're all very driven and have been successful in our life in some way, form, or fashion. For me, it was like athletics. For somebody, it might be like you went all into ballet, or, whatever that might have been for you. And that is your initial training in your formative years. And so you carry that into your adult life and you go, and then you're a mom, or maybe you're a single dad, or whatever situation you find yourself in. And you rely on that training from your formative years to get through. But that comes from scarcity. That comes from fight or flight. So now you've seen some success in the growth that you've had, which I think all of us in this space can say that we've had. We've had this massive trauma. We've run through the mud and we've become this lotus out of the mud. And then we're like, oh, wait, here it comes again. Maybe you feel this like angst or fear, unrest is what I'm hearing. And this is saying, find the balance, take a deep breath. And actually, I feel like we were talking about this before we even started recording this episode. We were just kind of talking, chatting amongst ourselves. And I feel like that's kind of what we were talking about, is this unrest or this like feeling of like anxiety that's been happening lately. And finding the balance is so important, that you can't do that without taking a step back. And yes, I'm saying it to myself. I hope it helps you, but I'm saying it to myself because it's time to take a deep breath. It's time to find the rest. And it's time to just let things happen. You've done the work. Stop trying to put your whole self into everything. Let go, as Alyssa would say, let go of the boat, right? You still have 2 fingers on that boat. Let go of the boat. You don't know what's going to happen to you once you do. But I guarantee the pot gets stirred and the good things happen, right? It's going to feel very bumpy and uncomfortable, but the other side is so worth it every time. And we know this to be true because we've done it. We've seen our manifestations start coming through. I feel so passionate about that. I hope it helps someone or speaks to someone's soul because it spoke to mine.
Thank you very much for that beautiful message. Leads into our guest today too, because I feel like her sharing her story is going to come back to, the message that you just shared. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody to our good friend, Jodi Van Meter. Jodi Van Meter is a certified life coach and family recovery coach and the founder of Above It All Coaching. Her work is shaped by lived experience navigating grief, family addiction, and major life transitions. Through her own healing journey, Jodi discovered that healing isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about reconnecting with who you are beneath survival. And today, she supports individuals and families in finding clarity, boundaries, and self-trust as they rise above life's challenges. So, welcome, Jodi. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you, ladies. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me. I'm just so humbled that you asked me to be a part of your podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Jodi, I feel like, especially post-COVID, what you are doing, like your message, and especially with like addiction and things of that sort, is so needed right now. What's going on in the world is it's building, right? It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the world needs people like you who kind of have been through the mess of it all in that space, that can come back and bring some type of like organized thought to this process of, because that's what it is like I think people they just get so lost in their own minds. And so I'm so excited to have you on. I really hope that people who see this can make a connection with you and pull something from it that maybe is like buried deep within, right? That's what we want to do. We want to call out those shadows that we push way down so that we can raise them up, recognize them for what they are, because sometimes we carry shadows that aren't even ours anymore or weren't ours to start with. And so I feel like your work is so incredibly important. And so we are really excited to have you, and we're just going to rapid fire ask you questions. Just kidding. But we have so many questions for you. So take it away.
All right. So you had mentioned that life taught you how to be strong, responsible, and resilient, but it also taught you how to abandon yourself. So if you can tell us, when you look back on earlier versions of yourself, the one who is just surviving, what do you wish Jodi then knew what Jodi knows now?
I probably would have to say that what I learned from all of that by being in survival mode is that you don't have to stay stuck there. It takes some work, but I wish I would have known that I wasn't put on this earth to take all the bullshit that I used to put up with. I didn't have to be walking around on eggshells. I didn't have to be worried about what I said. I am free to speak and say whatever I want to say, and that my happiness comes before anyone else's. I wish I knew that I really needed to put me first. And if I would have known all those things combined, I don't think that I ever would have gotten myself in the situations that I did.
But also, with that being said, so two things. One, I'm going to bring it back in just a second so you can tell a little bit of your story so that we can find out what's Jodi all about. But also, what you're talking about right now is something that I think a lot of us question. Once we do the work, we're like, well, why me? Some of us have to go first, right? Some of us are called to go first, and we are way showers. And so, we can sit there and focus on the pain and the guilt and the shame and the list goes on. And the moment we realize that we deserve more, we are worth more, is the moment we take our power back and we step into this light and we forgive ourselves. And once we forgive ourselves and we feel we're never going to be perfect, right? We're not walking around capes like with our stories on our chest. Everybody look like, but we gain something. And when you gain that, it was so hard for me to gain this knowledge and this peace within and not want to share it, right? And I think that that's kind of what calls a lot of us to do the work that we do. So With that being said, Jodi, if you could kind of bring it back a little bit, tell us a little bit about your story and what was that messy middle for you. And then we could get into the pulse of how you overcame. But in order to get to that, I feel like we need to first understand Jodi's story. Like, what brought you to where you needed to heal in the first place?
And before I do that, something that you just said reminded me that I know now that I had to go through all of those things because they prepared me for what I do now and who I am today. Yeah, let me start. I'll tell you guys a little bit about my story. It's a long one, but I'll try to keep it short. So, I got remarried in 2016, and I married into a family of addicts and alcoholics. And my life was pretty much a whirlwind. So, first of all, my husband, now ex-husband, had 3 boys. 2 of those boys we sent to treatment. We were constantly trying to get them help. I can remember going into the bathroom one day to get a towel, and I pulled the towel out, and the needles and the spoons and the cotton balls all fell on my feet. It was just constant chaos, it seemed like. The youngest son was the one that had 2 pretty severe overdoses. He was able to work through that, but he just never could put the demons behind him. They just kept coming back. In November of 2021, my now ex-husband, I came home one night and he said, I need to talk to you about something. And I said, okay. Had no clue what he was about to tell me, but he proceeded to tell me that 2 weeks prior, he filed for a divorce and didn't tell me. Then in February of 2022, the youngest son died from an overdose. And looking back, I can remember feeling alone and always thinking there has to be something different that I can do to help him. But I have to remind myself that I did my best. And after the divorce was final, I ended up moving. I was actually in Arizona when he passed away. So I moved to Arizona, and prior to that, though, there were so many things going on that about a year before he told me that he had filed for divorce, I started working with a life coach. And there was just so much going on that it was just one thing after another. And I never felt like things were changing until after he had passed away and after the divorce was final. And I went in to see her one day, and I told her, I said, I just feel like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I can't figure out what it is. And she said, Jodi, I've just been waiting for you to say those words. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, because I've known for a long time that, you were put here. There are bigger and better things. You were meant to help other people. And I was like, well, I can't go back to college because I'm too old to go back to school. And she said, you are never too old to do anything that you want to do. So when I moved to Arizona, I decided to go back to school, and I enrolled at the University of Arizona, and I received a certification in life coaching, family recovery coaching, and I also am a family and parent support specialist. And so my biggest passion, though, is working with families who have a loved one that is affected by addiction. I know what it's like to be in that role and not know what to do and think that you are all alone and have no other options.
So this makes me really emotional actually right now, because although my situation was not addiction, the core feeling of when you say, I know what it feels like to be so alone. Like, I remember that moment when I was so alone in the dark and I had no one that could console me, or there was just so much judgment around me. And I remember thinking I'm gonna die. Like I'm gonna die like this.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I've gotten emotional about that. But when you say, I know what it's like to feel that deep, dark, like aloneness, it just struck something in me, because I remember that feeling like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's not something you would wish on your worst enemy. Like to feel those feelings is so, it's interesting because we're in two completely different situations, but it elicits the same dark feeling internally.
Yeah.
You know?
That feeling of being alone, it doesn't matter what's causing those feelings. You still understand that it's those feelings of being alone. I'll back up and tell you another little side note about being alone. You know, because of some of the choices and decisions that I had made in my life, I didn't know at the time, but I know now that I was definitely a people pleaser. I was definitely codependent. And it got to the point where I was scared to death, so fearful of being alone. And when my now ex-husband told me he filed for divorce, I just felt like my world had just ended because I was going to be alone. Through all the work that I've done, I made a decision that I was not going to date. I was not going to get involved in any relationship, that I was going to take some time for me to be alone with myself. And I've done that now for over 2 years. And now I am in such a better place. I'm not afraid to be alone. I am alone with myself every day. And,
Yeah.
you know, I've had to learn to love me again.
So it's funny when you talk about being alone. I always joke that I accidentally fell in love with being alone, because people are like, you don't want to come out, or, you know, let's go do XYZ. And I'm like, no. When I want to, right? Like when I decide, okay,
Yeah.
I want to go be around people, I'll go. But for the most part, I'm like, yeah, but I could watch Netflix and I could like write in my journal or be in my salt.
Yeah.
Like I love, and maybe it's just the phase that I'm in, because it's been like maybe 2 years for me too. It's been 3 now, but it took me a long time for that alone piece, because I also had that feeling of like, I had my son at 21. I was still a baby. And before that, I had roommates for a couple years. And before that, I lived with my mom, like, and my
Yeah.
sibling, like I had never been fully alone before. And then I'm 21 and I have this child to keep alive by myself. Like, who allowed me to do that? I don't know. Babies raising babies. And so then I found myself after divorce at 30, old enough that I had never been alone. And then when we shared custody and the kids weren't even here, I remember cleaning the whole house and like then cleaning it again and it being clean and cleaning it. Finally, I sat down and I cried because I was like, I don't know what to do if someone doesn't need me. I don't know what to do if, like, what do I've always had a task. I've always been in fight or flight. I've always had to do something or fix something or be something to someone. And then when everything goes away and that tree has shaken and all the fruit that you thought wouldn't fall and the fruit that you thought would fall hits the ground, you're like, holy shit, what do I do?
I think, and even on the flip side of that, because I've been married for over 21 years to my husband, but even in the thick and the heart of the grief and the trauma that I was dealing with, even when you have somebody, you can be in a room full of people and still feel so alone,
That's so true.
And like you were saying, Eileen, I don't know what to do if somebody doesn't need something from me. I was kind of like, I don't know what to do if I'm not explaining myself to someone because that's what I had to do to survive. So I feel like feeling alone is such a broad thing that people can feel in so many different situations. I love my husband and we're gonna die together, but even being married to him for so long, like I said, there were times when he couldn't even console me, and I did feel so stinking alone because I thought nobody understood. Even part of me was like, oh, he's only here because he feels sorry for me. All this stuff was going on in my head.
And all of that, it's in your head, it's internal. So I guess that's really cool that we have these different perspectives because I get what you're saying 100%. And we had to do the same work.
Yeah.
To get to the other side. We had to be okay with being in your own mind, really, right? Yeah. Like in your own mindscape. We do things outside of us. We need outside validation to escape the things that we hide and push down within ourselves. And it's so cool to see when we have conversations like this, all the different ways these little things can come up and just attack your brain and your whole, wreak havoc on your life. And it's, you can be married. And you can have someone who loves the hell out of you and wants to just shake it out of you, but they can't do it for you. Like that's something that only you can do. And it's so interesting, the fact that we have 3 completely different stories, but we are still coming to the same point of like, you still have to come home to self. You still have to learn to love who you are. Before you can let other people in. And whether you're in a relationship or you are alone, you still close yourself off from people. And sometimes the people that want to be there so badly and love on you, and nothing can console you. Nothing can fix that but you and spending time with yourself.
Yeah.
I also think in certain situations, even though you have your loved one, a spouse who wants to help you so much, if they haven't walked a day in your shoes, they don't understand. And sometimes it even makes it more difficult by them wanting to help you. They have no idea where you're coming from.
John and I were driving home from dinner the other night, and he actually brought something up. He's like my biggest fan. He always talks to me about
He's so podcast.
Cute. It's just wonderful. But he actually brought a really good point. He said, these people that are spouses and friends of all the people that are going through this cocoon butterfly program I feel like the loved ones need to go through it with them so they can really understand. He said, because you talk about it a lot and I listen to it on the podcast and stuff, but I don't know what it's like because I didn't go through it with you. So that just reminded me when you said that, unless they know, they can't really support you in the way that you need it.
And that's the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? It took me a long time to realize because I'm an empath. So no matter if I felt it or not, I feel it. Like I kind of do know what you're going through just because I literally can, I'm wearing your pain and I don't like it, take it back. Like you can keep it. But unless you are one of those people that can feel raw feelings to your core, which I also wouldn't wish on anybody, it's a blessing and a curse, right? For those that are like your husband, who they want to understand, they want to love you and they want to be there for you, but unfortunately they just can't, they don't know what they don't know. So they can be there for you. They can sit in the room quietly and let you go through it and just kind of be there. But the only thing that will, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jodi, but like I think especially in like situations, what you're bringing to the table tonight is that those are things that it's great to have the support, but because they don't know, they have to let you break. They have to be strong enough to let you break on your own, and they can't fix it. They can't try to piece the puzzle back together for you. They have to let you walk that path.
You're exactly right. And as I was sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking you were almost describing family recovery coaching, because you have these families and they want to help so bad, but unless they know how to really help, to make a difference, because they don't understand. They have a loved one who's dealing with addiction, but most of the time, those parents have never dealt with addiction themselves. They just want to fix them and they want to make them better. And they also go through feeling guilty. And, you know, that's the first thing that I work with my clients on, is that, you know, I tell them it's perfectly normal to feel guilty, but you have to stop carrying that guilt. It's not yours to carry. Mm. And as we continue to work on setting boundaries, how to actually speak to their loved one and what to do when there's chaos. It's just so amazing to see the changes when they start to utilize the things that I'm teaching them. Makes a huge difference because, you know, their loved one, the addict or the alcoholic, a lot of times says things and creates the chaos because they know they're going to get a reaction. And when the parents stop reacting and focus on different areas, it really does change things for the person who is going through the addiction.
So what you're talking about, and this is how, because I'm visual, but what you're explaining right now, how it works in my brain, is that said adult or person who's outside of the addiction is the baseline. And the person with addiction, and this is how I explain it because I've had a kid in crisis. So kid in crisis does this. They need a baseline to come back to. So if you're both doing this, there's nothing to come back, right? If you're freaking out, there is no baseline. You're both up in the sky. Who knows what the hell can happen at that point? That's when you take a break. You cannot come to a solution when it's like that. Literally just picture whenever like my son will come up and he's all over the place. I remind myself I'm the adult. I have to create the baseline. And I literally picture as he's irritating God love him, as he is just pushing the patience and escalating 0 to 60. I literally in my mind picture a straight line.
Yeah.
Like, and I focus on that line, and then I take a deep breath and I'm like, okay, I got this. And eventually, once I started doing that, we used to be like, all the time, right? Yelling at each other. And
Right.
then after I had learned that from the outpatient program that we've been in for the last 2 years, once I started implementing that line, it started to dissipate. And or we would just leave it alone. It wouldn't go anywhere. We would leave it alone. And then we would address it later with our team of people. And
Right.
now we're in a place where we don't even need to call them anymore because
That's great.
he gets there and he recognizes that he's kind of there, and I give him that baseline. And it's not perfect by all means. There are some things as a parent that you just but for the most part, that line has saved my relationship with my kid. And so as I hear you speaking, I hear very much that same concept of, well, we aren't the ones in crisis. And since we're not the ones in crisis, we have to give them something to come back to. We just have
Absolutely.
to. So is
Yeah.
that kind of where you're at?
Yeah. And I was sitting here thinking about when I said that they have to stop reacting, they have to learn how to respond and not react. Simply saying, you, for instance, it's Christmas and there's a big family function. And when you are able to begin telling your loved one, you can come if you are not drinking and using. If you are, you will not be allowed to come in to the family function. You have to start setting those boundaries and your expectations, because allowing them to go ahead and come in the home and just create chaos for everyone else isn't fair.
Yeah.
And when you start to set down some of those ground rules, you actually, in the beginning, they're not going to like it. But as time goes on, you will start to see a change in them as well.
I still find myself sometimes, being that person that shrinks because I'm afraid if I say something that it might upset the other person, even though it has nothing to do with my past. It's just that feeling that can creep in, so I'm like, okay, maybe I just won't say anything. So there is that guilt that often comes in with speaking up and setting those boundaries. And I have to remember that I can't project my old situation onto those people, because they are not those people. And that's hard for me to do sometimes, but I know it's so important. It's one of these old habits that keeps creeping up. What role did boundaries play in your healing, and how do you help clients navigate the guilt like mine, which has nothing to do with addiction or anything, but the guilt that often comes in with setting those boundaries with their loved ones?
Yeah, and I think it all ties together, Emmy. It doesn't matter what the situation is. I help my clients understand that guilt is absolutely normal, but the guilt is not theirs to carry. So we work through, first of all, I help them basically get back to finding their peace. If they want to have the peace, they have to set the boundaries. And the other part to that is, if you want to help your loved one, you have to set the boundaries and you have to stick with them. And something that's very hard for a lot of parents or anyone when you're dealing with that is to stop enabling, because, oh, mom, I need $20 for gas, or I need $20 for food. I'm starving. We all know where that money's going. And there's so many different parts to this.
I think we need to focus on the money piece, because as you say that, for me, especially if it's like your kid, motherly instinct kind of overrides the whatever percentage you think that they're spending on. Maybe it's 80% that you think they're going to spend on drugs or whatever addiction stuff, but it's still my kid and they need to eat. And that part, that 20% will always override the 80%. So like, how do you, because I can't imagine, my kid asks me for money all the time, and I am not dealing with like addiction. And so I can't even imagine having to think about that when I send money. Cause even now I'm like, yeah, right. You're buying a pair of jeans.
And, so if you start telling them things like, I'm not going to give you $20, but I'll meet you someplace and I will buy you some food. Or if you're hungry, come on over and I'll fix you a meal. So there's ways to work around it. Now, is their loved one going to be very angry because they're not giving them the money? Absolutely. And you have to learn to be okay with that. That's them being angry is on them. You have given them other options. So it's not like you are just saying, oh, so you're hungry, whatever, figure it out on your own.
You're not abandoning them. You're giving them the option to get what they essentially
that they wanted.
The nourishment that they need. So you're not abandoning. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. And then I'm curious, just because family recovery, well, first, people don't talk about it enough, right? Which is why this episode is so important. But what would you say people like misunderstand about loving someone who's struggling with addiction? Because mine is a very different story. And I keep pulling from my story because it's so wild to me that the kid in crisis that I have is so similar to the things that you're talking about. It's like actually blowing my mind. But what would you say about someone, or say to someone who loves someone unconditionally, whether it's spouse, child, whatever, that is struggling with addiction?
You don't ever have to stop loving them. You have to learn how to make sure that you're at peace with yourself, and that the guilt is not yours. There is so much stigma around addiction, and a lot of people still don't understand addiction. But you're going to love your child or your brother or your sister. It doesn't matter who it is. When you start setting the boundaries and setting down the rules, it doesn't mean that you no longer love them. You are still trying to help them, but in a different way. You're not giving in to what they want. And Thylene, you're so right. There are so many people out here who still don't know that things like family recovery are available to help them. That's where my passion really lies, because I know that there is so much need for it. There are so many families out here that they don't know if their loved one is going to be okay tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
so maybe telling them like, it's okay to talk about it, or like, it's okay to reach out to people like you.
Absolutely.
Because
yeah.
I think that asking for help oftentimes is probably the hardest part, because then you have to admit that the family has a problem. And a lot of families with society, the way that I was raised, we didn't talk about our families.
That's what we wanted everybody else to think. But to your point, Jodi, a lot of people don't know that there's help for families, because a lot of people do think, even today, that you have to be the addict to go to NA or AA or anything like that. You have to be the one that's struggling to go. But no, it's open for everybody.
And people they don't think about that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right. And sometimes it's good to go just to get the perspective of the person that is addicted or that is an alcoholic, because I think it sometimes helps when you are hearing other people's stories. You find out you're not the only one. You're not alone. And when you start to realize that, things start to you're more willing to take the actions needed. So it's a very tough, touchy subject. Family recovery is still fairly new. I can remember when we were sending the boys to treatment, the treatment facilities, they didn't have any family programs. And now today, the majority of treatment facilities, treatment programs do offer a family program, which is great. But if your loved one is not willing to go to treatment, there's still help available for you and the rest of the family.
That's incredible. I do have another question that I feel is really deep and important to me. So my mom passed away in 2017, and she had emphysema from smoking cigarettes. And I'm wondering, because I'm like, oh, I've never dealt with addiction before, but I'm wondering how many people go through what I have gone through, but don't call it what it is. Like, the woman was on 24/7 oxygen and sneaking cigarettes out on the back porch, smoking with her fucking oxygen on. God bless her soul.
Addiction.
I love her more than anything in the world, right? And I would never, I'm not trying to say anything negative. I'm just calling it what it is, because I feel like maybe sometimes we overlook things that are societally, is that a word? like drinking, or, you could go home and drink a glass of wine every night. But a little trick I learned when I was 21 was that you can fit a whole bottle of wine in one glass, usually. And I was like, it's only one glass. Bitch, no, that's the bottle.
A fish bowl.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, in your opinion, with what I feel like, maybe not that it's a misconception, but maybe we skip over we don't address it or pull in people like you until we see needles. But what about the other stuff?
You're exactly right. And cigarettes, and a lot of times alcohol, eating,
food addiction.
Food addiction. Yeah. People don't stop to think about those things, because you're right. They're not shooting up drugs. So those things, sometimes, I would say probably the majority of the time, are kind of pushed to the side. But it would absolutely be the same types of work, because it is an addiction.
So the process that you would go through with someone who was doing a very hard drug, you would suggest for someone who had an addiction to, or maybe just an addictive personality. Because I feel like some people, if they're not gambling, they're smoking. And then if they're not they just insert addiction, but the addiction is the heart of the problem. And maybe not everybody's addiction turns into needles or whatnot, but it could, how, when people injure their back and they go and they take pills at the hospital, and then it's it turns something on. This is just what I've heard through situations or things that I've read. And so I'm asking more than anything the range.
You're absolutely right. And, even the pain pill addiction, the opioid addiction, that's a huge one. But I think, and let me just state, first of all, that even though I have studied addiction a lot, I don't work with the actual addict myself. My passion is to work with the families. And so that's where my focus is, helping the families. And I think that, like in your situation with your mom, maybe if the family would have if the family would have worked with someone, they could have learned a little more about how to possibly help your mom.
Before she was on oxygen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope
Definitely.
that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I think the general consensus is what I'm getting is address it as soon as possible. As soon as you start seeing the precursors, which maybe we should go over what those are, maybe, or what families can look for. And then being okay with asking for help. I think those are, I'm like doing her vibe check right now. Calm down, Thylene. I'm getting really excited because I feel like this is such an important conversation. We need to talk more about this shit.
Had the idea been in the minds of your family, and you could have gotten together and maybe learned a little bit more about how to help your mom before it progressed to the way it did. There's also the misconception that one meeting and they're going to be fixed, or they should be fixed, So how do you help clients, the family members, trust the timing of the actual process and trusting the process when the world and everybody around them says they should be over it by now? And I know this from personal experience because, when I first started healing from my own trauma and everything, I got and still now, I got things that still come up and shouldn't you be over it by now? That was a long time ago. Or, I thought you worked through that already. So
who said that? I'm gonna fight them.
How do you?
Who said that to you, Em?
How do you help your clients that encounter that? Like, this should be done by now.
And you ladies know from doing the work yourselves that healing has no timeline. And the people that say, oh, you should be over that by now, you should be over your grief, just get over it and move on. That's not the way it works.
But also, so Jodi, I feel like there's also an aspect to this of grieving the life that you thought you would have. Because I feel like with a lot of situations, but we're talking specifically about addiction right now, is you get married, right? And then that person becomes an addict, and you had this life in your sight that was very attainable. And then this roadblock happened, right? Or the two kids, and you feel like there's nothing, you've tried everything, you're out of tools, like there's nothing, you grieve the life that you thought that you were going to have with your spouse or your kids or this or that. Like, that, is that something that comes up for the families when you work with them?
Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. Because no one, especially I would say for the parents, they don't get married and have kids and think, oh, my child's going to grow up to be an addict. I mean, that's just not the way it happens. And so the more that they can understand and learn about addiction, because addiction is a disease. And I know there are a lot of people out there who would argue with me about that, but it's been proven that it is a disease in the brain. And so I think the more that families, parents can learn about the about what's taking place within their loved one. And also, I talked a little bit about the stigma, and they have to learn to walk away from the stigma. The stigma is always going to be there. There's always going to be people saying things. But the more they can stay away from that, the better off they're going to be. And, you're right about the grief. They are grieving for the relationship that they thought they would have with the loved one that they don't have. And, they can still, there is always hope. And I think a lot of times what happens too is when the families start doing the work, sometimes their addicted loved one sees the changes in them, and we will see them be more willing to go to treatment and get help for themselves when their families are getting help.
Do you think that's because there's less judgment at that point? Like they feel like less pressure maybe from the family because the family's taken a step back and maybe has different tools?
I think, yes. Once the family does get the tools and the loved one starts seeing the difference in how they're handling things, that absolutely makes a difference. So when the loved one wants to cause an argument or a fight and create chaos in the house, and the parents say, you have to go now. And when you are no longer angry, you can come back. But we don't have to deal with that, and we're not going to deal with it.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful too. And it's definitely a process to learn that and be comfortable. I wouldn't necessarily say be comfortable because it's not really a comfortable thing to have to do or say, but it is a process in order to accept that this is the right thing to do for everyone involved.
So that's part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jodi, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. It's been absolutely fascinating, and your work is just changing lives, whether you realize it or not. But we're going to shift gears a little bit. So we're going to kind of move into becoming her, because that's kind of the heart of our podcast. So if becoming her had a quiet moment and not a dramatic one that was loud and yay, pomp and circumstance, what did yours look like when you started to become her?
Gosh, much more calm and peaceful. And for me anyway, becoming her didn't mean becoming a different person. I just had to remember who I was. And so once you're able to do that is when you can actually come back to yourself and become you again, become her.
Yes.
So beautifully said. I'm like freaking out over here because that is literally, I feel like the more people we have on that are in different situations but come to the same result, the more lives we can touch, that people will understand we're all in this process and we all carry it within us already. So that was so beautifully said. Thank you, Jodi.
Thank you.
What does alignment feel like in your body now that exhaustion no longer takes over or runs your life?
Much more calmness. I feel like now that my body is aligned, and there's still going to be chaos, I think, that happens, and here's the other thing, I don't think that we are ever healed 100%. I think that we continue to heal as we move on. Different things are going to come up.
I'm glad that you talked about, there's always going to be chaos, but it's how we respond to it.
I do have one final question before we wrap up completely on the back end. If you could leave our listeners, Jodi, with one permission slip today, what would it be?
I would say to remember that you are worthy and that you are loved. Don't feel guilty for all the things that you might be going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So important to remember that, because that is at the core. Like, I feel like that's how you know you're at the beginning of something new that you need to work through, is when you feel those feelings. First you feel alone, and then you feel guilt and shame, and right. So that's kind of because your feelings are your indicators, right? So when you start feeling alone, you're like, oh, that must be new. And then you learn the tools and you start asking the questions, right?
Yeah. All right. So the final question that we ask all of our guests: the heart of I Am Her is becoming, and we touched on this a little bit already, but who is Jodi becoming in this next chapter?
I would say stronger, and just being able to help more people, creating new things, coming up with new ideas of ways to help more people, and being in my power and being her, being myself.
Yes, I love it.
Stop
Jinx,
it.
Yum me a Coke.
Wait, what are you supposed to do in a jinx? When you jinx, you say,
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
No, but you are supposed to, you say jinx. Oh, double jinx. That's what you're supposed to say.
Oh.
Never heard that one.
I haven't either. Okay,
close us out, Maestro.
All right, so now we're going to move into the final part of our episode. This is called her vibe check. So we're just going to kind of go round robin and give our top takeaway from the episode today. So Jodi, would you like to start?
Sure. I think my top take was just by the questions and the insights that you guys brought up. Is there, you think that you are really making an impact, but there's more and more and more people that actually need what you have to offer. So thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
Yay.
I think that's so big to come on here and realize, oh shit, what I do matters. That's so powerful. Yeah. That's huge. I love that. I have like 9,000. It's really hard. My brain's going a million miles a minute, because I feel like just in our conversation, we unpacked so much. And I recognized now more than ever how interconnected our experiences are, and how important it is to listen to your feelings, and how your feelings are the indicators of, because we say it a lot, but sometimes just because I like the process that I go in my head, sometimes it just takes a minute to click. I knew this, but I know it like, does that make sense? Like, I know it so much bigger now. Like, I understand it so much more, that my teenager and preteen that was in crisis has a lot of the same stuff that you went through. Yeah, similarities. I'm struggling because there's just so much going on in my brain right now, but there's just so much that even though it wasn't addiction, it's still crisis, and our bodies do and react in a similar way in crisis. And then when we listen to our feelings, it leads us to the work. It shows us literally where to go. And I just wish that that was something that I knew years and years and years ago. But now I know it. And the more we talk about it, hopefully the more people will learn it and teach their kids, so that the next generation doesn't have to like half die like we did. That's fine. Everything's fine.
I'm fine. I'm good. I don't know why you keep asking if I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
All right. I think my biggest takeaway from today is just understanding that there are so many resources out there that people are not aware of. For example, Jodi coming on our episode today is really letting everybody know that she is a resource. You know, there's so many resources that people aren't aware of for families in particular. And families are not alone and they don't need to feel alone. There are places you can turn.
What Emmy said, which was so important, that there is services that are available to you, or people who want to help outside of a full-on therapist and a full-on treatment center.
Yeah. I'm glad that you pointed that out. So on that note, Jodi, where can listeners find you? And we'll link it all under this episode, but where can they find you and what kind of help can you offer?
So I do have a website. It's aboveitallcoaching.com. I also do offer a free discovery session. I'm also on Facebook and on Instagram. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, we will definitely link those under this episode.
And by we, she means her.
Yeah, we mean me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she'll share it.
I'll share it.
Yeah.
But she's the brains of
the operation.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Sometimes it feels like surgery. Thank you for sticking with us, Jodi. Again, thank you so much for all of your insight and expertise. I know anybody that listens to this episode is going to learn so much and really feel your passion for helping families with addiction. All right, everybody, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and your favorite podcast platform. So until next time, take what resonates, leave the rest. And remember, somewhere, a lion in a Hawaiian shirt is cheering you on. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.